I know what you're thinking. 1869? Well, that must be a game about the opening of the First Vatican Council. But surprisingly, it's not. No, 1869 is actually a trading game. And to be honest, it's not that great. First, the good. The scope is very good. You can play all over the world, all of the continents. There are many cities. There are quite a few different types of goods that you can trade. But on the bad side, it's very clunky and very slow. The menus are mainly text-driven, and it takes a long time to do anything. The graphics, as you can see, are quite nice, and the design is well thought out and well put together. But all in all, the game is very slow. There's no storyline, and there seems to be no purpose to what you're doing other than just making more money and buying more ships to make more money, blah blah blah, and on it goes. To be honest, this genre has been done better before with titles like Patrician, so unless you're a huge fan of the trading genre, I would probably give this one a miss and play something similar instead. 1942, the Pacific Air War. Well, let me just get one thing off my chest to begin with, the reason that I really don't like this game, and it's visibility. It's a real shame because there's been some good work put in the graphics and design, and the game itself is quite extensive with career mode, and lots of missions and plane types and so on. But for some reason, and I guess this is probably historically accurate, when you're playing the actual game, your control panel takes up almost the entire screen. You can see more looking out the sides and rear of your plane, but of course that's not what you need when you're shooting at something in front of you. This really does bog up the game completely. I know they're going for realism here, but to be honest, I would have traded in the realism for a little bit more playability. You need eagle eyes to find your enemy, and even then, you'll have a hell of a time getting them in the crosshairs to actually kill them. This game is too hard for all the wrong reasons. 2400 AD. Well, this is a game that's based on the Origin Ultima system, and similarly, it is an RPG game. Although really this game has more of a focus on exploration and talking to people than it does on shooting and fighting, although there are elements of that as well. The story is that you're based in a dystopian future where aliens and robots have taken over society, and you're part of an underground that's fighting back. It's all pretty simple, but considering how old the game is and the tools that they're working with at the time, it's actually pretty impressive how they've managed to make a fairly believable and understandable sci-fi environment. It might not stack up too well against RPGs that came later on, but if you're at all interested in the early Ultima years of RPG games, this is a really easily overlooked classic that's well worth trying out. The game of Othello. It begs the question for me, do we hate the things that we're bad at, or are we just bad at the things that we hate? I am awful at the game of Othello. If you've never played before, the game is played on a grid with white and black pieces. You take it in turns placing pieces on the board, and any of your opponent's pieces that you can bracket between your own get flipped over and turned to your own color. Likewise, your opponent is doing the same thing to you. So it's a good idea to go for the edges and corners where your pieces are very difficult to catch. I am awful at this game for some goddamn reason. I don't consider myself a stupid person, but I was playing this game on the simplest difficulty level and the computer still kicked my ass every single time. I've played Othello before and I've always been bad at it, and I have no idea why. If you like the game, maybe you'll like this. I loathe it. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, an adventure game based on the classic novel by Jules Verne. This comes from the bad old days of adventure gaming, where things were pretty much ill-defined, and games really love to punish you for doing the wrong thing, even if it's given you no warning that that's what you're not supposed to do. Basically, you spend your time trying to figure out what you're doing and clicking on things at random, but of course if you click on the wrong thing, the game will end prematurely. In fact, from the first room that you actually begin in, if you click on the wrong place, which is the ladder leading back outside, you will die instantly and have to restart the game. This is typical of a lot of adventure games of this era, but that's really no excuse. By today's standards, this is just simply bad design. The game's pretty ugly, you never know what you're doing, you get punished for making the wrong random decision. This game is really a chore to play. The $100,000 Pyramid. This is based on an American game show, and to be honest, I had to look up the rules on the internet to figure out what the hell was going on. Basically, the game is played with 2 players, although in the computer game you play alone. In real life, the gameplay is like a game I know as Taboo, where you have to get your partner to guess a word without actually saying the word. So you have to come up with words that are related to the target word without actually saying it. This seems a little arbitrary in the computer game, though, because your partner is not actually represented on screen. The computer just suddenly decides that you've chosen a good word or not. So it does seem a little bit disjointed. It would be good just to show a face or something so you had some sense that you were working with a partner. I don't know. I don't like this game, but I guess if you have some nostalgia for the TV show, you might get something out of it. A10 Tank Killer. To be honest, this is a pretty good little flight simulator. Let me start off with the bad. It's very limited. For starters, you're only flying one plane, which is the A10, which admittedly is quite an interesting plane because it's really just a ground attack plane. But that also brings us up to the other limit, which is the missions themselves. There's only about 10 or so, and they're all based on bombing and shooting ground targets, as you would expect from the A10. So there's very little, if anything, by way of dogfighting or anything like that. But on the good side, I mean, the game does look pretty good. It's not amazing by today's standards, but it's very functional. It's certainly not an ugly game. It plays smoothly. It seems to have a reasonably high level of realism without being too bogged down. It's still fun and easy to play, and to be honest, this is a pretty good flight sim. A Dudley Dilemma. Well, this game was actually a competition winner for people using the Adventure Game Toolkit. But how it won any kind of competition, I can't imagine. This game is terrible. And not because I have anything against text adventures, because I certainly don't. Text adventures were a big part of my early gaming experience. But this game really is boring. It just seems like it's someone's little pet project. The game is set in a Harvard dormitory, which again just seems like some sort of personal reference that the game designer thought would be interesting, but isn't interesting to anybody else. The goals are completely undefined, the puzzles are completely undefined. You basically walk around trying random things, seeing if you can get anything to happen without really knowing why you're doing them. This is a really horrible example of game programming done for the programmer's amusement and without the audience in mind. I do like text adventures, but this one sucks. A4 Networks. Well, this game is an extension of A-Train, which we'll have a look at pretty soon. The game tries to extend on the basic sandbox theme of A-Train by hanging the missions together with a little bit of a plot. And when I say a little bit, I mean a little bit. The idea is that you're trying to take over a company by being very successful in creating networks. The basis of the game is the same as A-Train, though. You're trying to build up areas by putting in both transport networks of trains and buses, but also of owning houses, apartments, and local businesses. There's more range here, though, going from full-size cities to the Cayman Islands, where apparently no one has ever lived before you turned up, which would be a bit of a surprise to the residents there. It doesn't work completely, but this game should be applauded for trying to bring a bit more depth to the A-Train experience. A Line in the Sand from the amazing SSI. This is a real historical war game based on the first Iraq War and the defense of Kuwait by the Allied nations. As you can see, the graphics are pretty minimalist, but they get the job done. The game looks more like a game of Risk than anything else, and none of the battles are actually played out graphically except for some of the air defense. But it doesn't matter. This is a very deep and very engaging war game. Of course, on the one side, you have the Allied forces, who are pretty much expected to win. But for me, the real meat of the game comes from playing the Iraqis. Of course, they're not expected to win the war. That would be impossible. They're just expected to hold out for as long as possible, and there can be some really interesting challenges here. This is a good, solid, fairly deep, real history war game, and it really is worth giving it a go, even though it may look a little bit dry at first glance.